For 7 years, a billionaire's son lived in absolute silence. His father owned skyscrapers across 3 states, but he couldn't buy him a single sound. The top specialists in the world examined him. Experts from Boston, London, Singapore. Tens of millions of dollars spent. No answers. Then, one spring afternoon, a neighborhood kid with zero medical knowledge stopped on a suburban driveway, looked at his ear, and spotted what every specialist overlooked. In under 90 seconds, he removed something that changed everything. The billionaire's son heard his father's voice for the first time in his life. But what that boy pulled out wasn't natural. It wasn't an accident. Someone had placed it there deliberately. And when they discovered who did it, the truth shattered that family forever. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because what comes next will make you rethink everyone in your inner circle. Let me take you back to the beginning. The delivery room was chaos. Monitors beeped in rapid succession. Doctors barked instructions. Nurses rushed between machines, checking vitals, adjusting tubes. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in cold white light. Then the baby arrived, and suddenly, everything went silent. Not the room, the baby. No cry, no wail, no sound at all. The mother's breathing was ragged, her body exhausted, but her eyes were locked on the tiny figure in the doctor's gloved hands. The baby's eyes were open, bright green, staring upward at the lights, blinking slowly. But his mouth stayed closed. His chest rose and fell steadily, but there was nothing else. No noise, no reaction. "Why isn't he making any sound?" the mother whispered, her voice cracking. A nurse stepped forward, her brow furrowed. She snapped her fingers twice, directly beside the baby's left ear. Nothing. She clapped her hands together hard, right near his face. The baby didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't blink any faster. The doctor's expression shifted. His jaw tightened. "We need to run some tests immediately." The father stood frozen near the edge of the bed, his expensive gray suit wrinkled from hours of pacing. Adrian Cole, one of the wealthiest men in the country. He built empires from nothing, negotiated billion-dollar deals before breakfast, controlled boardrooms with a single glance. But right now, staring at his newborn son, he felt his hands trembling uncontrollably. They ran tests for hours. Auditory brainstem response, otoacoustic emissions, CT scans of the inner ear, neurological assessments, reflex tests. Every machine hummed and clicked, generating data, spitting out numbers. Adrian stood outside the testing room, watching through a small window as doctors moved his son from one machine to another. The baby, Elias, they'd already named him, stayed calm throughout, watching the ceiling, the lights, the faces hovering above him. Peaceful, unaware. Hours later, the lead doctor finally emerged, tablet in hand. His face was professionally neutral, but Adrian could see the tension in his shoulders. "Mr. Cole, your son is healthy. Strong vitals. Brain activity is normal. Reflexes are responding properly." He paused, but he's showing zero response to auditory stimuli. Adrian's wife sat in a wheelchair beside him, pale, still recovering. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "What are you saying?" The doctor set the tablet down. "Your son can't hear." The words landed like a physical blow. Adrian felt the air leave his lungs. His wife made a small, broken sound, covering her mouth with both hands. At all. Adrian's voice was rough, unfamiliar to his own ears. The doctor shook his head slowly. "Right now, no. He's not responding to any sound, at any frequency or volume. We don't know why yet. There's no obvious physical obstruction, no clear structural damage. But functionally, he's deaf." That night, they were moved to a private recovery room. His wife had finally fallen asleep, sedatives helping her rest after the trauma of labor and the devastating news. Adrian sat alone in the dark beside the small hospital crib. Elias was sleeping, tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Healthy, perfect, silent. Adrian leaned close and whispered his son's name. "Elias." Nothing, not even a flutter of eyelids. He said it louder. "Elias." Still nothing. He stood up, gripping the rail of the crib, and spoke directly into his son's ear, his voice breaking. "Can you hear me? Please, buddy, please hear me." Elias slept on, peaceful, completely unaware of his father's desperation. Adrian collapsed back into the chair, pressing his palms against his eyes. For the first time in his adult life, the billionaire felt utterly powerless. He'd solved impossible problems, turned failing companies profitable, made phone calls that changed industries overnight. But he couldn't make his son hear his voice. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and started searching. Specialists, surgeons, experimental treatments, clinical trials, gene therapy, cochlear implants, stem cells, anything, everything. The blue light of the screen blurred as his vision clouded with tears. He wiped them away quickly, alone in the darkness. Then he made a promise. To himself, to his sleeping son. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, I'll fix this. He had no idea how wrong things were about to go. Adrian Cole became a man obsessed. Within 3 months of Elias's birth, they were on a private jet to Berlin. The Institute for Advanced Auditory Medicine. Doctors in crisp white coats examined Elias for 6 hours straight. They used equipment Adrian had never seen before, machines that looked like they belonged in science fiction. They measured brain waves, tested cochlear function, analyzed genetic markers. At the end of the week, the head specialist sat across from Adrian in a minimalist office overlooking the city. "Mr. Cole, I'm sorry. There's no medical explanation. His ears are structurally perfect. His auditory nerves exist. His brain should be processing sound. But it isn't. We don't know why." 2 months later, they were in Tokyo. The finest pediatric neurologists in Japan ran their own battery of tests. New theories, different approaches. Same result. Nothing. Then Switzerland. Then Boston. Then a private clinic in Singapore that specialized in unexplained neurological conditions. Every specialist said the same thing in different languages. "We've never seen anything like this." Adrian spent $14 million in the first year alone. Not on treatments. There were no treatments to try. Just on searching for answers that didn't exist. Elias grew anyway. By age 3, he was walking, exploring, laughing silently at things only he found funny. He'd toddle through their mansion's long hallways, running his small hands along the walls, feeling vibrations from footsteps, from doors closing, from life happening around him. He couldn't hear it, but he felt it. He learned to read the world through observation. He was a gentle child, calm. His green eyes, the same shade as his mother's, watched everything with startling intensity. While other children his age threw tantrums and demanded attention through screams, Elias simply pointed, tugged on sleeves, made eye contact, and waited patiently for someone to understand. Adrian taught him sign language before he could properly write. They'd sit together in the library every evening, Adrian's large hands forming shapes, Elias's small fingers copying, trying, learning. The boy was brilliant, quick. By age 4, he could sign complex thoughts, tell stories with his hands that most children couldn't articulate with words. But Adrian still read to him every night. Elias would curl up in his bed, wearing his favorite green shirt, soft cotton, comfortable, nothing restrictive, and Adrian would sit beside him with a book. The Little Prince 1 week. Well, the Wild Things are the next. He'd read aloud, his voice filling the quiet room, knowing his son couldn't hear a single word. "Why do you do that?" his wife asked once, watching from the doorway. "He can't hear you." "I know," Adrian said quietly, not looking away from Elias. "But maybe some part of him knows I'm trying." By age 5, Elias preferred simple clothes, soft fabrics. That green shirt became his favorite. He'd wear it 3 times a week if they let him. No tight collars, no scratchy tags. In a world where he couldn't hear, he felt everything else more intensely. Textures mattered. Comfort mattered. Adrian tried everything money could buy. He funded 3 separate research teams to develop new auditory technology, experimental cochlear implants that went beyond current medical science, neural interfaces that might bypass damaged pathways, gene therapy approaches that existed only in theoretical papers. He turned part of his company's R&D division towards solving his son's silence. No, it worked. Year 6 arrived. Elias started private schooling at home. Tutors who knew sign language. Specialists in educating deaf children. He learned to read and write in 3 languages. Math came naturally to him. He'd sit at the kitchen table working through problems, his expression focused, occasionally looking up at his father with those expressive green eyes, checking if he'd done it correctly. Adrian would nod, smile, sign perfect with his hands, and Elias would smile back, silent and bright. But the isolation was real. Other children didn't know sign language, didn't understand why Elias couldn't talk back when they yelled at him in parks or stores. Eventually, Adrian stopped taking him to those places. The mansion became their world. Safe, controlled, lonely. At night, Adrian would stand in his study, looking out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. His wealth had grown even larger over these 7 years. His company had expanded into 4 new markets. His net worth had doubled. Forbes had called him the architect of modern industry. But none of it mattered. He'd trade every building, every stock, every zero in his bank account for one sound. One word from his son. Every night, before leaving Elias's room, Adrian would lean close to his sleeping child and whisper the same thing. "One day you'll hear my voice, buddy. One day." He said like a prayer, like a promise. But after 7 years, even Adrian was starting to doubt. What he didn't know was that everything was about to change. And when it did, the truth would destroy him. 15 miles across the city, in a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered more than they shined, another boy was growing up in a completely different world. Malik Turner lived in a narrow row house on Ashford Street. The paint was peeling. The front steps had cracks running through them like spider webs. The screen door didn't close all the way, so you had to pull hard and listen for the click. Inside, the floors creaked, the pipes rattled when you turned on the water, and in winter, you could see your breath in the bathroom until the space heater warmed up. Malik's clothes told the story his family never spoke out loud. His red t-shirt was faded from too many washes, the color more pink than crimson now. His shorts had a patch sewn on the left knee where he'd torn them climbing a fence 2 summers ago. His sneakers were held together with duct tape around the sole. They'd been his older cousins before that. Hand-me-downs were just life. But poverty hadn't made Malik hard. It had made him aware. By the time he was 7 years old, Malik had developed something his grandmother called the gift. He could sense discomfort in people the way some people could sense a storm coming. It wasn't magic. It was attention. Deep, careful, constant attention to the way people moved, breathed, held themselves. He noticed things others missed. When Mrs. Chun from 3 doors down walked past him on the sidewalk, smiling and waving, Malik saw the way she favored her right leg, saw the slight when she tried to hide. He stopped her gently, tugging on her sleeve. "Your hip hurts," he said. Not a question. A fact. Mrs. Chun blinked, surprised. "How did you? You're walking different. Like it's pulling." He tilted his head, studying her. "My grandma walks like that when her back acts up." Mrs. Chun laughed softly, but her eyes got watery. "You're right, sweetheart. It's been hurting for weeks." Malik nodded seriously. "You should sit with ice. 20 minutes. That's what helps my grandma." She thanked him, squeezed his shoulder, and walked away shaking her head in wonder. The neighborhood kids started calling him the boy with listening hands. It sounded strange, but somehow it fit. Malik didn't just look at people. He listened with his whole body, with his eyes, with the way he leaned in close and paid attention like you were the only person in the world. He helped constantly. When little Jasmine from next door scraped her knee, falling off her bike, Malik was there before her mother even heard her crying. He sat with her on the curb, talking quietly, distracting her while he cleaned the scrape with bottled water and covered it with a Band-Aid from his pocket. He always carried a few, just in case. When Marcus, the kindergartner who lived upstairs, started having nightmares and wouldn't tell anyone why, Malik sat with him on the apartment building's back steps. Didn't push, just waited. Eventually, Marcus whispered that he was scared of the dark because he thought monsters lived in his closet. Malik didn't laugh. He nodded like it was the most serious thing he'd ever heard. "Wanting to check?" Malik asked. Marcus nodded, eyes wide. Malik went upstairs with him, opened the closet door, moved every box, every coat, every shoe. No monsters, he declared. I checked everywhere. You're safe. Marcus slept through the night for the first time in 2 weeks. Adults noticed too. They'd watch Malik ride his beat-up scooter down the cracked sidewalks, red shirt bright against the gray concrete, and they'd shake their heads in amazement. That boy sees things, they'd say. He feels things. Like he's tuned into a frequency the rest of US can't hear. His mother, Nina, worked 2 jobs, morning shift at the laundromat, evening shift cleaning offices downtown. She was tired most days, but she always made time to sit with Malik before bed. One night, after he'd helped calm down a neighbor's crying baby just by holding its tiny hand and humming softly, she looked at him with pride. You know what your gift is, baby? She asked, brushing his hair back. Malik shook his head. Your heart is louder than any sound, she said softly. You don't need words to tell people you care. They feel it. That's rare. Don't ever lose that. Malik didn't fully understand what she meant, but he nodded anyway. While Adrian Cole saw the world through wealth and power, Malik Turner saw it through empathy. While Elias lived in silence inside a mansion surrounded by everything money could buy, Malik lived in noise and struggle, but somehow found peace in helping others. 2 boys, 2 completely different lives. Neither of them knew they'd soon meet. And when they did, everything would change. The suburb was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Neat rows of identical houses, freshly paved driveways, manicured lawns that looked like they'd been trimmed with scissors. Adrian's development company was considering a major investment here. Luxury townhomes, mixed-use commercial space. He'd driven out to see the area himself, get a feel for it. Elias sat in the back seat, watching the world pass by through tinted windows. Adrian parked near the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. The late afternoon sun hung low on the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The light was soft, warm, the kind that made everything look like it belonged in a painting. Long shadows stretched across the pavement. The air smelled like cut grass and distant barbecue smoke. Come on, buddy. Adrian signed to Elias through the rearview mirror. Let's walk around for a bit. Elias climbed out, his green shirt bright against the muted tones of the suburban landscape. He wore matching green shorts, simple slip-on shoes. Comfortable. Easy. He squinted slightly in the sunlight. Then his eyes caught something, dandelions growing wild through a crack in the sidewalk. He knelt down immediately, fascinated. His small fingers reached for the yellow flowers, touching them gently, watching how they bent and bounced back. He plucked one carefully, held it up to the light, studied the way the sun shone through the petals. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his CFO, probably about the quarterly reports. He looked at Elias, still absorbed in the dandelions, perfectly safe on this quiet street. Adrian stepped a few yards away, pressed the phone to his ear. Talk to me, he said, his voice shifting into business mode. He turned slightly, pacing, listening to numbers and projections and market analysis. He didn't see the boy on the scooter turn the corner. Malik had been riding through the neighborhood, taking a shortcut home from his friend's house 3 blocks over. His scooter rattled over the uneven pavement, wheels clicking rhythmically. The sunset cast everything in warm light, made the whole street glow. He was thinking about dinner, about whether his mom would be home yet, about the math homework he still needed to finish. Then he saw the boy in green. Something about him stopped Malik cold. He didn't know what it was at first, just a feeling, an instinct. The boy was kneeling on the sidewalk, picking flowers, completely still. Too still, like he existed in a different dimension from everything around him. Malik slowed his scooter to a stop, one foot dragging on the pavement. He watched for a moment, concerned, trying to figure out what felt wrong. The boy wasn't crying, wasn't hurt, at least not obviously. But something was off. Malik could feel it the way he always felt these things, a pull in his chest, an awareness that someone needed something. He got off his scooter, let it clatter gently to the ground, and walked slowly across the street. In the background, Adrian's voice carried faintly, still on his phone call, gesturing with one hand while talking about profit margins and zoning regulations. He hadn't turned around yet. Malik approached carefully, the way you'd approach a scared animal. Slow, gentle, non-threatening. He stopped a few feet away, studying the boy. Green shirt, quiet expression, eyes focused entirely on the dandelion in his hand, like nothing else in the world existed. "Hey," Malik said softly. The boy didn't turn, didn't react at all. Malik's brow furrowed. He stepped closer, crouched down to the boy's level. "You okay?" Still nothing. The boy kept examining the flower, turning it between his fingers. That's when Malik noticed it. The stillness wasn't peaceful, it was isolated. This boy wasn't ignoring him. This boy couldn't hear him. Malik's heart clenched with sudden understanding. He moved around to face the boy directly, kneeling on the sidewalk now, his worn red shirt bright against the concrete. Their eyes met. The boy, Elias, blinked, finally noticing someone was there. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes softened slightly. Curious, cautious. Malik didn't say anything else. Instead, he watched, really watched, the way the boy held his head, the way his eyes tracked movement but not sound. And then Malik's gaze drifted to the boy's ear. He tilted his head slightly, leaning in just a little, squinting. Something about the ear looked wrong. Not painful, maybe, but something. A shadow, a subtle unevenness he couldn't quite name. "Does it hurt here?" Malik asked gently, even though he suspected the boy couldn't hear him. He lifted his hand slowly, pointing toward Elias's ear, his expression full of concern. Elias watched Malik's hand, followed the gesture, then looked back at Malik's face. His eyes softened more. No fear, just trust, like he recognized something in this stranger that 7 years of doctors had never given him. Behind them, Adrian's voice grew sharper, wrapping up his phone call. In seconds, he'd turn around. In seconds, he'd see his son with a stranger. But right now, in this golden light, Malik reached forward slowly, carefully, his fingertips hovering near Elias's ear. He felt it before he saw it. Something foreign, something that shouldn't be there. His listening hands had found what millions of dollars never could. Malik's fingers hovered near Elias's ear, hesitant but certain something was wrong. He'd helped dozens of kids with scrapes, bruises, splinters. He knew what skin felt like when something didn't belong. He pressed gently on the area just behind Elias's ear, where the cartilage met the soft spot below. His fingertips carefully feeling for, there, something hard, small, buried just beneath the surface of the skin. Not bone, not cartilage, something artificial, foreign, a faint metallic edge that shouldn't exist in a human body. Malik's breath caught. His heart started pounding. He looked at Elias, whose green eyes watched him with that same calm trust, and Malik felt the weight of what he was about to do. "Hold still," he whispered, even though he knew the boy couldn't hear him. But somehow, impossibly, Elias understood. Maybe it was the seriousness in Malik's expression. Maybe it was the gentle way Malik's other hand came up to steady his shoulder. Whatever it was, Elias stayed perfectly still. Malik pinched the skin carefully between his thumb and forefinger, feeling for the edge of whatever was buried there. His grandmother had taught him how to remove splinters. You had to be patient, had to feel for the angle, had to pull straight and steady, or you'd break it off and make things worse. This felt different, though. Harder, smoother. He adjusted his grip, pressed down slightly to push the object up toward the surface, then pinched again and pulled. For a second, nothing happened. Then something shifted. The skin gave way, and slowly, impossibly, a tiny metallic object began to slide out. Malik pulled carefully, steadily, his hand trembling slightly. The object emerged fully. A microchip, no bigger than his fingernail, dark metal with microscopic circuits etched across its surface. A tiny spot of blood marked where it had been embedded. The moment it left Elias's skin, the world changed. A car honked somewhere down the street. A normal, everyday sound. A driver impatiently tapping their horn. Elias's entire body jerked violently. His eyes went wide, wider than Malik had ever seen eyes go. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. His hands flew up to his ears, pressing against them like he was trying to block out an explosion. And then tears spilled down his cheeks. Not from pain, from shock, from overwhelming, impossible sensation. He heard it. After 7 years of absolute silence, Elias Cole heard sound. Malik froze, the chip still pinched between his fingers, his mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. The boy in front of him was shaking, crying, his chest heaving with breaths that came too fast. 50 feet away, Adrian's phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the pavement. He turned around just in time to see his son's reaction. Just in time to see the jerking motion, the tears, the hands over the ears. For a split second, his mind couldn't process it. 7 years of watching Elias exist in silence had programmed him to expect nothing. No reaction, no sound, no change. But this was different. This was impossible. Elias. The word tore out of Adrian's throat like a wounded animal. Raw, desperate, loud, and Elias heard it. The boy's head whipped around, eyes searching frantically for the source of the sound. His father's voice. The first human sound he'd ever heard. The first word. His name. Adrian ran. Not walked. Not jogged. He sprinted across the pavement, exactly like a man who'd just watched his entire world shift on its axis. His expensive shoes pounded the concrete. His suit jacket flew open behind him. His face was a mask of shock and hope and terror, all colliding at once. "Elias!" he screamed again, and this time Elias saw him coming, saw his father's mouth moving, and made the connection between the sound and the man. Adrian dropped to his knees, so hard it must have hurt, sliding the last few feet across the rough sidewalk. He grabbed Elias and pulled him into his chest, wrapping both arms around his son like he could protect him from whatever impossibility was happening. "Can you?" Adrian's voice broke. "Can you hear me? Elias, can you hear me?" Elias was sobbing now, his small body shaking against his father's chest. The world was suddenly full of noise. The wind through the trees, Adrian's ragged breathing, the distant hum of traffic, birds, a dog barking 3 houses away. Everything, all at once, overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying. He nodded against his father's shoulder. A tiny movement, but unmistakable. Adrian made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. His hands came up to cradle his son's face, pulling back to look at him, tears streaming down his own cheeks now. "You can hear me," Adrian whispered, his voice shaking. "Oh God, you can hear me." Behind them, Malik still knelt on the sidewalk, the impossible microchip gleaming in his palm under the golden sunset light. And for the first time in 7 years, everything had changed. Adrian's voice cut through the air like a blade. "What is that?" He was still on his knees, one arm around Elias, but his eyes were locked on Malik's outstretched palm. The tiny metallic object caught the dying sunlight, glinting with an unnatural sheen. Malik looked up, confused and frightened by the intensity in the man's voice. I don't know. It was in his ear, behind it, under the skin. Adrian's hand shot out, palm up. "Give it to me. Now." Malik carefully dropped the chip into Adrian's hand. The billionaire held it up to the light, turning it between his fingers. His business mind, trained to analyze and evaluate, immediately recognized what he was looking at. This wasn't organic. This wasn't a tumor or a growth or some bizarre medical anomaly. This was manufactured, deliberate, precision-engineered. Someone had put this inside his son. "Get in the car," Adrian said, his voice hollow. He stood, scooping Elias into his arms. The boy clung to him, still overwhelmed by the sudden flood of sensation, burying his face in his father's neck. "Sir, Malik started. "You too. Now." Malik didn't argue. Something in the man's tone told him this wasn't optional. He grabbed his scooter and followed Adrian to the sleek black Mercedes parked at the curb. 70 minutes later, they were in a private medical lab Adrian kept on retainer in the city. The kind of facility that didn't ask questions when a billionaire walked in with a mysterious object and demanded immediate analysis. Dr. Reeves, a microelectronics specialist Adrian had used for corporate espionage cases, worked under a high-power microscope while Adrian paced the room like a caged animal. Malik sat in the corner with Elias, who was slowly adjusting to the world of sound, flinching occasionally when a door closed or someone spoke too loudly. After 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours, Dr. Reeves looked up, his face pale. "Mr. Cole, you need to see this." Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides. Dr. Reeves pulled up images on a monitor, magnified views of the chip circuitry. This isn't medical technology. This is military-grade signal suppression. It's designed to emit a targeted electromagnetic pulse at a specific frequency, one that matches the electrical activity of auditory nerve conduction. Adrian's jaw tightened. In English, someone engineered this to block your son's ability to hear, not by damaging his ears or his nerves, but by disrupting the electrical signals between them. It's sophisticated, expensive, and very, very deliberate. The room went silent, except for the hum of the lab equipment. How long would it have worked? Adrian's voice was barely above a whisper. Indefinitely, as long as it remained in place. The power source is biological. It draws energy from the body's own electrical field. It could have stayed active for decades. Adrian felt something break inside his chest. 7 years. 7 years of watching his son live in silence. 7 years of traveling the world, spending millions, begging specialists for answers. And the entire time, someone had done this on purpose. Ooh, the word came out like a growl. Dr. Reeves shook his head. That I can't tell you. But whoever made this had access to cutting-edge technology and significant resources. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He made calls, activated investigators, pulled every string he had. Within 48 hours, he had a team of private investigators, cybersecurity experts, and forensic accountants tearing through every record connected to Elias's birth. They started with the hospital. Maternal medical files were subpoenaed. Delivery room staff were identified and interviewed. Security footage from 7 years ago was recovered from backup servers. Every person who had been in that room was traced and questioned. It took 6 days. On the 7th day, Adrian sat in his home office, staring at a file folder on his desk. His hands were shaking. The lead investigator, a former FBI agent named Catherine Price, sat across from him. "You're sure?" Adrian asked. "Positive. We have bank records, encrypted communications, and a confession." The truth was worse than Adrian had imagined. Dr. Marcus Chun, a pediatric neurological specialist who had been present in the delivery room as a consultant, highly respected, impeccable credentials. He'd been one of the first to examine newborn Elias when the nurses noticed he wasn't responding to sound. He'd also been paid $400,000 by Victor Harrington. Adrian's chest went tight at the name. Victor Harrington, a real estate developer Adrian had outbid on a major downtown project 5 years before Elias was born. A man who'd lost nearly $50 million because Adrian had been smarter, faster, more ruthless. Harrington wanted revenge. Catherine continued, her voice clinical. He couldn't attack you directly. You're too well protected, too powerful. So he found another way. He paid Dr. Chun to implant the chip during routine newborn procedures. Chun had access. He had opportunity. No one questioned him. Where is he now? Adrian's voice was cold. Dead. Chun? In custody. He's cooperating fully. Apparently, the guilt has been eating him alive for years. And Harrington, his lawyers are already filing motions. Adrian stood slowly, walked to the window overlooking the city. His city, the empire he'd built through intelligence, strategy, and sheer force of will. He'd crushed competitors, outmaneuvered rivals, built something that seemed untouchable. But none of it had protected his son. Someone had walked into a hospital room, looked at his hours-old baby, and deliberately stolen 7 years of his childhood. 7 years of silence. 7 years of Adrian whispering bedtime stories his son couldn't hear, making promises he didn't know if he could keep. All because of a business deal. A building. Money. "I want everything," Adrian said quietly. "I want Harrington's assets frozen. His company dismantled. Every property, every investment, every bank account. I want him buried so deep he'll never see daylight again." Catherine stood, already in motion. After she left, Adrian sat alone in the dark office. The city lights stretched endlessly before him. Billions of dollars in real estate. Thousands of people who depended on him for their livelihoods. Power that could move markets with a single decision. And yet, when it mattered most, money had meant nothing. He'd been surrounded by wealth, by security, by every advantage in the world. And still, someone had gotten to his newborn son, had hurt him in a way that no surgery could fix, no amount of money could undo. Downstairs, Elias was asleep, finally adjusting to a world filled with sound. Safe now, healing. But Adrian knew the truth. The real damage wasn't the 7 years of silence. It was knowing that the people you trust can be bought, and no amount of money can protect you from that. 3 weeks after the chip was removed, Adrian Cole sat in his study with Malik Turner and his mother, Nina. The room was massive, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, a desk that cost more than most people's cars. But somehow, with Nina and Malik sitting across from him, it felt smaller, more human. Adrian cleared his throat. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but this conversation made his hands shake. "Ms. Turner, your son saved my child's life. I don't say that lightly." He paused, looking at Malik, who sat quietly in his faded red shirt, hands folded in his lap. He saw what trained specialists couldn't see. He did what millions of dollars of medical technology failed to do. And I owe him everything. Nina reached over and squeezed Malik's shoulder, pride evident in her eyes. Adrian leaned forward. "I want to offer you something. Whatever you need. Full scholarship to any school in the country. A trust fund for Malik's future. A house. A real house in any neighborhood you choose. Medical care. Security. Anything." The silence stretched for a moment. Nina's eyes welled with tears. "Mr. Cole, that's incredibly generous." "It's not generosity," Adrian said firmly. "It's debt. I can never repay what your son did, but I can try." Malik had been quiet through the entire conversation, but now he looked up, his young face serious. "Can I ask for something else?" Adrian blinked, caught off guard. "Of course. Anything." Malik glanced toward the doorway, where Elias stood with his tutor, watching nervously. Over the past 3 weeks, Elias had been slowly adjusting to sound, learning to identify voices, distinguish between car engines and lawnmowers, understand that the rumbling in the walls was the heater turning on. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Malik looked back at Adrian. "Can Elias be my friend?" The room went completely still. Adrian felt something catch in his throat. Of all the things he'd expected, money, opportunities, gifts, he hadn't expected that. "Do you want to be his friend?" Malik nodded. "He seems lonely. I know what that's like. And I think we could help each other." Adrian looked at his son, standing in the doorway. Elias had been watching Malik's lips move, trying to match the sounds to the words. And when he realized what had been asked, his entire face lit up. He nodded eagerly, almost desperately, his hands signing "yes, yes, please" over and over. Adrian's vision blurred. He blinked rapidly, trying to compose himself. Then yes. Absolutely yes. The friendship that formed between Elias and Malik wasn't just unexpected. It was transformative. Malik came over every afternoon after school. At first, it was overwhelming for Elias. Every sound was sharp, loud, unfamiliar. A door closing sounded like thunder. The rustle of paper sounded like an avalanche. Even whispers felt like shouts. But Malik was patient. He'd grown up listening with more than just his ears, and now he taught Elias how to do the same. "That sound," Malik said one afternoon as they sat in the backyard. "A bird chirped somewhere in the trees. That's a robin. They sing in the morning and evening. My grandma says they're saying hello." Elias tilted his head, focusing, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then he smiled, a real, genuine smile that made Adrian's chest ache from where he watched through the window. And this one, a car drove past on the street, engine humming. "That's a car. But listen closer. That's a nice car. Smooth engine. My mom's car sounds like it's coughing." Elias laughed. It was the first time Adrian had heard him laugh in 3 weeks. A sound that was hesitant and unpracticed, but absolutely beautiful. Malik grinned. "See? You're getting it." They spent hours like that. Malik identifying sounds, giving them context, turning the overwhelming noise of the world into something manageable, something that made sense. One day, Malik brought a basketball. They stood in the driveway, and Malik bounced it once. The sound echoed off the pavement, sharp, rhythmic, alive. "Your turn," Malik said, passing it to Elias. Elias bounced it once, then jerked back in surprise when he heard it. Then he laughed, really laughed, and bounced it again. And again. The two boys took turns bouncing the ball back and forth, and Elias discovered that sound could be playful. Fun, not just overwhelming. Adrian watched from the doorway, his arms crossed, his throat tight. Nina stood beside him, having stayed late after dropping Malik off. "Your son is healing," she said quietly. "Because of yours," Adrian replied. She shook her head. "They're healing each other." Malik has never had a friend who understood what it's like to feel different, to see the world differently. They needed each other. Adrian knew she was right. Two families, separated by wealth, geography, and circumstance, have been brought together by an act of pure empathy. Adrian made sure Nina got the house he'd promised, in a safe neighborhood with good schools. He set up the trust fund for Malik, ensured his education would be covered through college and beyond. But more than that, he made sure the two families stayed connected. Sunday dinners became routine. Holidays were spent together. Malik and Elias became inseparable. 6 months after the chip was removed, Adrian stood in the backyard watching the two boys play soccer. Elias was getting better at tracking the ball by sound now, listening for Malik's footsteps, the thud of the ball against grass. And then Elias laughed, loud, uninhibited, joyful, as Malik scored a goal and threw his arms up in victory. Adrian felt tears sting his eyes. For 7 years, he'd searched the world for a cure, spent millions, employed the best minds medicine had to offer. And in the end, it wasn't technology or money that saved his son. It was a 7-year-old boy with listening hands and a heart bigger than any fortune. Adrian whispered to himself, watching the boys embrace after another goal. Miracles don't always come from money. Sometimes they come from people you never expect. If this story moved you, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what you learned from Malik's gift. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth is, we all have the power to change someone's life. Sometimes it just takes paying attention, really paying attention, to the people right in front of us who need help. Be someone's Malik today. I'll see you in the next one.